goodness me. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming on this beautiful Sunday afternoon in Melbourne. For once, that's not ironic. Usually it is. Firstly, a little bit of housekeeping. Thank you for coming. We are massively oversubscribed for this afternoon's event. We usually oversubscribe by 10% on the grounds that people can't make it at the last minute, but people have been making it at the last minute, and some who we didn't actually expect were coming have made it at the last minute. So if there are any spaces in the audience, please shush up if you can. If there's any spare seats out there, I can't really see, but if there are any, please squash up as much as you can, because there will be still some people coming in, and I think some people are going to end up a little bit seatless. And as we speak, they're coming into the balcony, which is really quite lovely to see. Firstly, let me acknowledge that we're on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people, unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And I think that I can speak for the people of Kooyong who voted very strongly yes at the referendum last year, in saying that I hope that in our lifetimes we will achieve a better reconciliation than we've been able to move to in recent times. And just to set some ground rules, or to explain how this is going to work today. Many of you have been to our town halls before. We do have people on a live stream as well. I'm not sure how many, but I believe quite a few. What we'll do this afternoon is we're going to have Jacqui and I are going to have a bit of a chat, half an hour, 45 minutes or so, and then we will have 45 minutes for Q&A. The Q&A will be with a couple of handheld mics from within the room, but we also have some questions that people have submitted on the live stream already, and there will be some more forthcoming, I believe. I do ask everyone that we demonstrate courtesy in that process, in the Q&A process. We'll have some rules around that and how it will work, which I'll explain just before we start. But I think, on the other thing I have to say, Jacqui, is I believe my mum and dad are in the room. And,
well, you'll actually have to be on your best behaviour for once then.
Well, I was going to say, I don't want you teaching them any new words today.
Never too old to learn, Monique.
This is true. So we've done a few of these town halls so far, and I always find them interesting, and they're always really, really fun. And I have to say, the sense of anticipation about this one in recent days has been quite remarkable. The reason for doing them, and we do them at different times for different reasons. We've had them about what's going on in the electorate. We've done them in terms of feeding back to people on surveys and things that we've had in the electorate. We've talked about specific issues at times, and we've marked significant events like the referendum. But we've also had a couple of occasions like this one where it's just been an opportunity for a bit of scene setting and discussion, and an opportunity to take the temperature of Kooyong, but also to talk to Kooyong about the things that I've been doing as your elected representative since May 2022. And one of the things I committed to doing when I was elected as the member for Kooyong was to try to do politics differently. As an independent, I'm not obviously limited by party rules or by a specific ideology, but I do have a responsibility to represent our electorate as best and as effectively as I can. It became very clear to me when I got to Canberra that to do so I would have to work with people who were quite different from me and came from different backgrounds and different positions. And that's something that I've tried to do as effectively as I can. That's a little bit about what today's about, because Jacqui and I are as you know, very different people. I'm going to give you a bit of introduction to her in a minute. But we're very, very different people. We come from different mind points and different settings. There's many, many things I think that we probably don't agree on. Time will tell. There's this thing, you've had a much, much longer political career than I have. You've seen things I haven't seen, experienced things I haven't seen, met people along the way who are already gone. And I'm sure there's many stories to tell about that. But one of the challenges and one of the joys of being an independent or a member of a small party, I think I can speak for all of us who are in that position, is the opportunity to work with different people on different things. And to say, well, I don't really agree with you on that at all, potentially. Not sure I agree, I like how you worked on that. But this is something that we can work on together. And what I think we have done in the last couple of years, the Senate and the House, the independents and the members of the small parties, is we've demonstrated to people that can be incredibly effective. Now, it's a very different situation when you're in the Senate with the balance of power than when you're in the House, and that has its challenges of its own. But one of the great pleasures of the last couple of years has been working with people like Jacqui and people from other parties, small parties, independents, and getting things done. So that's one of the things I really wanted to talk about today. So I'll just give you an introduction to Senator Jacqui Lambie, who in some ways doesn't require any introduction. You can correct me if anything I say is wrong. So Jacqui grew up in Tasmania, in Devonport. She's one of 4 members of the 46th Parliament of Australia who didn't complete high school. Went on to join the army. Had a difficult time there.
No, not so much in the army. It was when I left.
After you left,
Sorry.
sure. Yeah,
that's okay though.
A difficult time.
You
with
wouldn't
Veterans
think so, yeah.
No,
because
no.
I
So
go
not
with
with the army,
defence as
yeah.
well, but my time in uniform, if I hadn't have done the damage to my body that had been done, I'd still probably be in there, God forbid. Yeah. But obviously God had other plans.
Yeah. No. Okay. Good. Yeah. So misrepresentation. Difficult time with DVA, Department of Veteran Affairs, after you left the army, and which I think in some ways probably shaped your attitude to government and authorities to some
I think
extent.
so. It also gave me, I was always with compassion, but it actually, when you're at your lowest and you're sitting down in there in the gutter, like I was for many years, and you see things from a very different perspective, even though I spent my teenage years growing up in public housing, having a touch of that is giving me a lot more, I think, probably a lot more compassion, but just more compassion, understanding. I've made it, I've been very honest about my younger son having a meth problem. So I think having that life experience and bringing that up to Parliament's been extremely beneficial for me and for many others out there that feel alone, that they're dealing with things by themselves, because I know what they're going through. So to share my experience and take that load off and go, oh my goodness, somebody up there that actually understands, makes a significant difference to somebody's life.
Yeah. Yeah, parenthetically, I think one of the, when you sit in Parliament, you look around the House, and it is true that there's still a lot of, middle-aged men in suits, but there's many, many people in the House who come from experiences or life experiences, backgrounds, very, very, which are really, really disparate. And that's one of the, I was just saying to Jacqui, I think it's really, people don't understand about Australian Parliament. When you look around, I'm always in awe of the people who've travelled 8 hours to get there on a Sunday, and 3 planes, at least 2 of which will have been late. Thank you, Qantas. And hours and hours and hours of travel each time. Often some people can't get back in the middle weekends of sitting fortnights. People make a big sacrifice, and some of the people who are sitting in that House have done it tough and worked very, very hard, and their experiences are perhaps not as celebrated as some of the experiences or the skill sets that other people bring into that place. But we'll come to that. So 2008, you entered politics as a Labor staffer?
No, so in 2008 I was very, very lucky, and Nick Sherry gave me an opportunity in his office to do some return to work. DVA had started some medical treatment with me. The unfortunate thing was, as much as I did that for about 6 months, is that they stopped giving me that medical treatment, and I went back to where I was. So I want to thank Nick Sherry for that, and I'll always do that, because I did try with the Liberal people, and they wouldn't have a bar of me. I just said, look, I'm a soldier, former soldier, just give me a chance. It doesn't cost you anything. It's return to work. It's paid for by DVA. I still get the same 75% of my original wage, and I'd really like to come in. I hadn't been worked then for nearly 8 years, and Nick was very, very kind to me and opened his door and allowed me in to get some experience back up again.
So essentially you're a veteran who'd had to leave the armed forces because of an injury, and you had an ongoing medical complaint, and you went to the Liberal Party and asked them to give you some work where you already had support to be in the workplace, and they weren't interested in taking you on?
No, I don't think they weren't interested in sort of taking me on. I wouldn't sort of say they weren't interested. I'm not sure that they were quite sure what to do with me, where Nick didn't hesitate. He just said, you know what, I'm going to give you a go. I believe in our soldiers, and we should give them a second go. So come in here. You can't lose anything by coming to work in here and starting to pick up some admin skills again. And that's what he did for me. So I'll always be very grateful.
So would you think that in the last 16 years the Liberal Party have learnt anything about dealing with Jacqui Lambie?
No, Monique, see, they're on the other side now, they're in opposition. I have a heap of new blue friends that I didn't have beforehand, so it's bizarre. But no, I don't think they've actually learnt anything. This is the problem with the Liberal Party, that they have not learnt. They are still not, even to the point I was just saying to Monique before, I said, do you know that here it is, the opposition leader, Peter Dutton, hasn't rang me once and said, come and have a cup of tea. Now, he's a bloke that wants to take power next time, and he's not talking to the crossbench. He doesn't have time out to have a cup of tea once every third or fourth sitting or anything like that to make sure he gets to know us and things like that. Malcolm Turnbull did. I can tell you now, Malcolm Turnbull was always going to go for PM because nearly every second sitting he'd have me in there having a cup of tea. And we may not have been talking about communications, just talking about family things, about what we'd been through, sharing our life experiences and things like that. So when he became PM, that made a significant difference. And you know what? He never stopped having those cup of teas with me and some other people up there at that point. At that time, he still carried that on. He didn't just dump us and go, that's it, on PM now. He still continued that on. So that is the way to play politics, because you never know. You never know from one election to the next who's actually going to be in power. I would assume that next election that there'll be, it will be a crossbench shared situation for them. So it's really silly for Peter Dutton to think that the Liberal Parties are going to win the next election, or that he needs to form government with the crossbench when you're not even speaking to them is absolutely shameful in itself. He's not even making an effort. So I'll call him out for that today.
So how did you get into politics then? What was the pathway?
So I realised within the first couple of years when I was fighting Department of Veterans Affairs, by then I'd really disintegrated. I pretty much was living rock bottom for about 8 or 9 years, and I remember falling into a heap one day. I was basically living between the bed and the couch because I couldn't get any medical assistance, and the pain was just overriding the rest of my life. And I could see also what Veterans Affairs was doing to my mates around me, but more so, we can handle that fine, come pick on us, but it's the second tier, it's our kids. It's the impact it has on our children. And it is shameful because the impact, because of what we're going through, that they become basically our carers. And that is just awful, and it's not just for 1 or 2 years. For me, that went on for nearly 12 years. I was out of the workforce for 13 years. So I made a pact to myself that if big fella upstairs would just give me a second chance at life, I would come back and fight like hell for our veterans, and I would make sure that I stuck to that job until that job was done. I did work out very early on, as much as I had no idea which side of the house, what did what. All I knew was I may not be good with the English vocabulary, but I am good with numbers, and I worked out it was going to take a hell of a lot less numbers to get in that Senate than what it was in that lower house. That's all I needed to know. Yeah, so I think for me, I ended up selling my house in the end. I was going under anyway because I'd used all my super to fight DVA. Financially crippled me. We are still fighting them. I'm still going for some of my claims now. It's just taken me that long because even me, I have to have a lawyer because I can't, to be honest with you, I can deal with every other veterans issues out there, but it still actually affects me when I deal with my own, so I let him do that job. I know where my weaknesses are. So I think, where was I going with that? So I had about $100,000 when I sold my house, and I said, that's it. My mum and dad went, oh my goodness, you're like 42 or 43, you're going to have nothing. And I said, we'll see about that, it'll be worth it. And in the end, obviously, I exhausted out of money because I was delusional. I also had been a part of the Liberal Party. I went and joined the Liberal Party for about 6 months, and I wanted to leave and realised I had not been to a state conference before or a political conference. So I had to stick around for another 8 weeks. It was the longest 8 weeks of my life before I resigned from the Liberal Party. I managed to get through to the Sunday at lunchtime, didn't quite get to the finish at Sunday, at the end of Sunday, and rang the newspaper and said, that's it, I'm going independent, I've had enough of this. And that's what I did. Unfortunately, that $100,000 over 12 months didn't go far as much as I tried, and as much as I could get half of Tasmania done, I couldn't get the other half. I started contacting Clive Palmer because I was very aware that he's got a big military background. I know you guys probably don't, and he doesn't go out there and say anything about it, but he has had family members, many of them that have served in our military over the years. And I asked him if I did not want to join his party, but would he please be able to help me and help the veterans out. And in the end, after about 3 months, he wore me down. He said, this is the way it's going to be. You're either coming with me or you're not going to win your seat. And I went, yep, no, Rose, that's fine. That was a really hard day for me because I just thought I'd got so far and turned my life around after 13 years and started to get back on my feet. And I was really hoping I could do it off my own boots, I suppose, and I didn't quite get to the end of it. So, yeah, I took his offer and went into Parliament. So, and I'll always be very grateful for his offer in saying that. Clive would not have got a seat in Tasmania had I not already been out there for a couple of years doing what I was doing. Rotary took me in, CWA took me in. They all wrapped the cotton wool around me when I first started to get up. The Burnie Chamber of Commerce was very nice to me as an independent, said you can wear your jacket around if you can go and do a couple of days free for us and go and learn about business. And I said, beautiful. So I spent 3 months doing that and nearly tripled their membership in that 3 months. So I had all those opportunities thrown at me and I'm very, very grateful, and they started to give me my self-esteem back and things like that. But I can assure you when I first went into Parliament, I was still quite psychologically damaged. It had only been 2 years. The day I sat in Parliament that was my last day in a psych unit. I spent the 2 years going into that, about 28 to 30 weeks in and out of a psychiatric unit. I don't regret that at all. I don't regret having 700 or 800 hours worth of psychology and psychiatry over that 13 years, because without that I wouldn't be where I am today, nor would I have been where I am today if I hadn't worn that uniform, because it gave me the resilience when I had a second chance at life to stand up and grab the bull by the horns for everything it was worth and just go hard.
I think it's probably worth noting that when your case was finally decided, the judge or whoever it was who determined on that case made the point that you would have done better and your course would have been less complicated and difficult, your recovery would have been faster and the costs would have been less had the Department of Veterans Affairs not pursued you and literally done surveillance on you and regarded the whole thing as an adversarial thing rather than...
Yeah, but I'm just one of thousands of veterans have been through that, and I guess that's why we're now at a Royal Commission. So they've been treated very poorly for a long time. It took our Vietnam veterans nearly 50 years to finish off getting everything that they were entitled to, and they said to me very early on, when you make it up there, they were very good to me, they backed me before anybody else, and they said to me, when you get up there, we don't want you fighting for us, we want you to fight for your generation and those below, because we're running out of steam. So I'll always be very grateful for that, to be given that opportunity. But I don't want my lot and those lot from the Middle East fighting 50 years for their entitlement, because I can see that they're already damaged physically and psychologically. And to put this on top of them when there's no need, and to put them, their family and their kids through that, it's just rubbish. There's just no need for that. This is supposed to be, basically it's an insurance system, and it should be the best, it should be gold standard, leading in Australia here to show the other insurance companies how this is done, and they have performed poorly for many, many, many years.
So much. So you got to Parliament. Didn't work out with Clive Palmer.
No.
So by 2014, November 2014, you were an independent. Then came all the Section 44 dramas.
Yeah.
Yeah, which obviously caught up many, many people, and many people lost their seat. It was an extraordinary thing to happen. So many people had to resign their seats and leave Parliament.
Yeah, so I think for me, first of all, when I first went in there, I was a wrecking ball for a couple of years. We all know that. We've seen that play out. It got to a point where Tasmanians couldn't even look me in the eye, and that, walking down the street, they wouldn't say anything nasty, but, when you're on the nose, when they won't even look you in the eye. Secondly, I had really big trust issues with what I'd been through, so it wasn't Clive's fault that I left. I just didn't trust anything he was doing, didn't trust anyone around me. I was listening to an advisor I probably shouldn't have had for that first couple of years. That wasn't helpful either, and my head was spinning. So I still talk to Clive that first couple of years when I left. Obviously, we didn't have a relationship. That door, I've been quite lucky to have that door open. I try and catch up with him 2 or 3 times a year. We don't usually talk too much about politics unless we're taking the mickey out of somebody. But usually, we just talk about family. I was with Palmer United Party for a couple of years because I had 9 months before I could take my seat after I was elected. I was always open and honest with Clive. So I'll always be grateful for that. And then, of course, I just start to turn my life around. People can see that I'm not this wrecking ball, and then I'm done under Section 44, so which I found absolutely absurd because Palmer United Party didn't ask or check. I put my hand up I just wanted to see what the candidate thing was like in the Liberal Party, so I put my hand up to run. And also, when I ran as a candidate for the Liberal Party, I wanted to see where I was at, and what I realised is even though I only had a 2-page speech, I shook the whole time, and this is a girl that could stand in front of 500 men on a drill square and give them orders, and I'm standing there like this. I was miles behind. So that really set me up to say, okay, I had to go to, like you call them, Toastmasters over here, so I had to go and do that for a year. So I worked out all my weaknesses, and they were everywhere. So that was quite helpful running as a candidate, while I worked on trying to get myself back on my feet as well and trying myself out. But when I was done on Section 44, it was a bit hard to take, especially for my family. And my dad really struggled with it because they could see, I walked out in front of a car by 2009. They'd seen me turn my life back around. We'd gone through all that as a family. And then to lose my Senate seat because of who my dad was, I tell you what, it must have added about 10 years on his life. So he just said to me, I said, that's it, we're finished. And he said, no, he said, Lambies don't bloody give up. No bloody bloke's taken your job. That's it. So Dad and I had a very dear friend of mine lent me a van, and he put Jacqui Lambie all over it, and Dad and I just ran round and round and round until we were dizzy in Tasmania, and we just kept going round and round and round. And then I was very, very lucky and got re-elected after 20 months. I'll be very grateful for people like ABC. The Drum had me on every fortnight because I was not a sitting politician. I had reality TV come after me, and I was able to keep myself out there by doing that. I had the same radio interviews that left me on those to still talk about that even though I was on the sidelines. So I'll always be very grateful, whether it was the right media or the left media. They all left those doors open for me, and that was really helpful because I can assure you, apart from when I got re-elected and I'd been on the sidelines I think for 21 months, the only money that really I had to spend was the money I made on Celebrity Get Me Out of Here. And some dating game on some show that nearly did my head in anyway. That's why I'm still single. It scared the bejesus out of me. Anyway. So I think for me, I ended up, I think it was all we spent was about 69 grand. And I must be the only person in Parliament that couldn't get my 152,000 I was entitled to because I hadn't actually spent that to get my seat back. But that, in saying that, I got to spend 20 months nearly every day with my dad, and I lost him a couple of years ago. So I'll be very grateful. I don't mind. I look back and I think, you know what? It also made me a stronger individual. It also gave me 20 months where I had cameras following me around because of reality shows and things like that, where I had a real big fear of them. That passed. So I look at all the goodness that come out of that and I think, you know, I didn't lose anything, but it gave me a chance then to show, hey, I could get back on my own 2 feet without Clive Palmer's money or anybody else's. I'd done it myself. So...
So, not content with being an independent, you've started your own party.
Yeah, I did start my own party. It was more so, it wasn't so much a party, it was actually to help other independents get up. And, you know, I've realised that it is a lot of work to try and get other people into Parliament when they're not going to run under your banner as such. So I think that even with Tammy left obviously, and that's fine, that's not an issue, and she'll work hard for Tasmania, but what it made me realise is I have to give up a lot of my time, and unless you're going to be, I think, a part of me, it really, if I have to give up my life to get you in, then you know, I'd like that respect back, is that you stay there, you do the right thing. We may not always agree. It's like working with the Teals. We might not always agree, but you don't chuck the baby out with the bathwater. All right? When you've got a good thing going, you tend to go, okay, well, how about if we do this, or you come in the middle or something like that. It's all about negotiation. And I think that's what works so well with the Teals. I was also, Nick Xenophon took me under his wing when I first got up there, thank goodness. And Nick taught me a lot about that sort of stuff, about negotiating, and of course, you know, had that balance of power with Palm United, and then Nick sort of had enough the next time around. But he was also, because I wasn't part of that balance of power then, and the Nick Xenophon team had it, Nick helped me do some deals when South Australia was signing off on stuff to help to Tasmania, even though I didn't have that balance of power. And I think it's only right for me to share that back and to give that back to others if I have that opportunity.
So it's a fascinating thing to see, because Tammy Chura was elected with you at the last election, but not as a Jacqui Lambie party. Were you both elected as independents?
Yeah, no. Well, she was she obviously under my face and under my name, and that's fine. But I just, you know, with Tammy, I just said, you can pretty much do your own thing. It's just on the big stuff. You need to stay together because that's where your power is. That's how you get deliverance. So when you've got those big bills coming through, that's when you need to be making those deals for your states. I have to be honest with you, you don't actually do a lot of wheeling and dealing for your states. Most of the stuff you do up there is for the nation as a whole. So any decisions you are making, you will usually affect the whole nation. So unless it's something where you're on that last person on a housing deal or something like that, and you go, that's it, beauty, I'm going to get Tasmania's housing debt, watch me. Things like that, because I can tell you that when I walk around Tasmania and I say to people, what have I done? And they go, thanks for the housing deal. Or they go, thanks for our veterans. And they go, I don't know, we don't really care. All we know is you tell them where to stick it, fur up their clacker all the time. We love it. Okay, righto, you pay me $235,000 a year to go and do that, that's fine. You know, so I think they're just appreciative of having a representative that is out there and can speak about their issues and make sure they're loud and proud about that, where a party would just say, you need to be quiet, okay, we don't need to be saying that anymore. Whereas I'm not under that. Like Monique's not under that. We can get up and we can speak about anything we like to help our own constituency out and the rest of the nation.
So at the last Tasmanian state election, obviously there are a number of candidates who were elected as representatives of your party, and you're planning to put some people up for the Senate at the next federal election? Yeah,
so we did that in Tasmania. We were very lucky actually, because I couldn't run 7 seats because we're only a small network, and you know, we all have jobs, even those people that help me out on a Monday night. You know, as much as people are interested in my board, they're just volunteers. It doesn't really matter who's there on a Monday night. If they can help, I'm in. So I think for me, we only ran 3. We have a different system down there for state, and we didn't run the 7 each ticket because you just can't. You can't control them, and for 6 or 8 weeks, that's your whole life. Because if one of them falls off, it affects everybody else that's on that ticket. So, which is really not fair for other people that are trying to do the right thing. So you've got to be really careful. We had to jump on that really quickly too. And as much as we try to go through the candidates, make sure they were okay, there were some of them I didn't know very well, but to make that 3rd spot, I had to put them on the ticket. They become a problem, a couple of them for me. And to try and keep that all at low key, to try and get the others up, my goodness me, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of patience, I can assure you. And being nice to someone or a couple of them when you don't want to be nice to them at all really tests me. So yes, we are running senators in other states. I had Angie Harper. I did Kapooka with her. She went through my military training. So we've been mates ever since then. First on my tickets will be veterans, those first ones up, and they'll be known veterans. There'll be the New South Wales one out next weekend, and you'll see somebody from South Australia out within the 2 weeks after that. We are sniffing in Victoria. So we'll see how we go. I've approached a couple of veterans here in the last week just to see if they'd go first on the ticket, because I'm not under any delusion we're going to struggle to get one up. We're certainly never going to get the second and third one up on our tickets. So those people that are running second and third, I'm very honest with them and just say you are not going to get up because we're going to struggle to get the first one up. But we do have a thing to say, well, if you stick around and you want to, and we do get the first one up, you do the right thing over the next few years, we'll put you first on the ticket next time. That's how it works.
Why? Why are you running all these candidates and there's people in different sets? What's the aim? I
think for us it's because we're not influenced. We look at every piece of legislation or every bill on its merits. I guess because I haven't taken those big political donations in the past, there is no influence. There's nothing. When I get on that floor, I have every bit of credibility. It doesn't matter what I'm talking about because no one's been influencing me. I talk about it on the floor because that is the right thing to do. It's got nothing to do with influence, nothing to do with anything else, but these things need to be addressed. So for me, and the other thing is you've got sort of left over here and then you've got the sort of right, but there doesn't seem to be anything in the centre. And I think that I'm just trying to pull off Nick Xenophon's legacy that he couldn't quite pull off, where we wanted this centre party sitting here. Okay, so we could look at each piece of legislation under the microscope and make a decision that was based on the merit of that legislation and make it better. Because usually, you can see the influences in it and you say, I want to take this out and I want to put this in. And it's making that difference, which is better for the country in the long run. That's how I see it. And quite frankly, you've got 4 other political parties up there. Like I said, 2 of them on the left, 2 of them on the right, and once again, none in the centre. So I want to see if I can bring that centre back into politics. I know it's going to be a really hard slog. I know that I'm going to have to do a lot more TV and radio and pick that all back up again. I'm going to have to work 7 days a week pretty much from about 2 weeks ago. I understand that to try and get other people up. But I don't care what differences we have. They won't be having that independent thought this time. You're either running with a network or you're not, but there is no independence. So when it comes to those big pieces of legislation, unless it is absolutely where you are losing sleep of a night time because of something you may have gone through in your past and it is really psychologically harming you, then you would be expected to make sure that you're voting for that legislation because, like I said, once you start to split, you lose that power. And there's no point in me giving up all this time and trying to get other people up if we end up in that situation. So no more, listen, you can do your independent thing and go out and do that. I'm going to tighten it up just a little bit more.
Interesting. I think we'll probably have some questions about the Jacqui Lambie network and things like that from the audience a bit later. I might move on a little bit first. Obviously in the Senate you've got yourself, One Nation, some other odd bods, and then the Greens. And you've had your differences with them at times, sometimes very publicly. How do you feel about things? There are times I know when people have, especially the small parties and the independents, have really set to and had a massive go at each other. I seem to recall Pauline Hanson doing some performative stuff around being anti-vax during COVID, and you requesting that she behave like a goddamn bloody adult.
Yeah, her and about the other 10% of Australians out there.
Yeah.
How about you worry about others before yourself?
Subsequent to which Mel Roberts leaked your mobile number on the social media, and David Van barked at you in the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
How do you then go back and work with people when they behave like that towards you?
First of all, I didn't actually hear David barking at me, so some people have things going on in their lives as well, so I'm just not sure. I certainly haven't held that against David. He's on the crossbench now. I think he's he's going through enough of his own stuff. I don't see any goodness in doing that, and I work with him where I possibly can. Well, Pauline's right is right, so, you know, she'll only vote with the Liberal Party, so that's quite difficult. They're probably feeling the pain because they've got no power up there. And I think that you have to try, you have to pave the way. I really don't care what they think about me because they're not my vote, they don't vote for me. So what I do care about is what is the best thing for the nation going forward. And, you know, that comes from your military background, and that's the way you've got to approach it. And you must put people before yourself. So for me, when I've got a state that has, you know, the worst health down there per capita, and some of the oldest population per capita sitting down there in Tasmania, and I've got them in nursing homes and worrying about COVID getting into them, and I'm sure there's many of us out there that didn't want to have those shots, but you do that to make sure that you are keeping them safe. So that is about putting others before yourself, and that is supposed to be the Australian way. And you know what? Sometimes in life you have to take a hit for others. If that means goodness, you know, it's too bad. That's just the way it is. I'll take the hit for our elderly. I don't care, I will, because that's how I was brought up. That is respectful. You always respect your elders.
Can I ask you about compromises? You know, even just in the last couple of years, there have been a number of times when the government's put up a bill in the House and you think, well, 90% of it is good and I'm fine with that. 10% of it sits very, very poorly with me, but I have to kind of, you know, make a decision about how to vote for it in its entirety. Other times you have to make a compromise on things that you might feel really uncomfortable about because, you know, there's a 60-40 in terms of the greater good. How have you found that? So, you know, you would have had to make some very, very difficult compromises over the last 7 years.
I think I've got a bit of a, you know, I did have that bit of slackness when Nick was there taking all the heat, which was lovely. But I think when you are making those decisions, the longer you're up there, I think the easier for me it gets, because I can truly go behind closed doors and whatever minister I'm talking to, or shadow minister or whatever, and be extremely vocal, I guess is the way to put it, in my opinion, and how that should go down, and can they compromise. Compromising is probably the best way you're going to get your bill through. It's also good if you've got another 2 independents, I think it's 3 of us now it takes, that are banging that same drum, because basically they're not going to get that legislation through until they do a bit of compromising. And it's not always 100%, but I tell you, as long as it's pretty close, that is a starter. And it is better to have a starter and then to come back a year or 2 later and go, you know what, I told you that wouldn't work now, can we fix that in the bill, thank you. Okay, so that's how you do it. But throwing it out and being a no, I'm not supporting that, that's not the way to do things. So for me, the only thing that I won't do is I won't give up my values. So I'm prepared to give and take a little bit, but if they become values-based and it's a definite no, we're not doing this, and they're going against my values, then I'm not voting for it. Simple. You can take whatever you want from me from politics, but when I leave, I want my values intact. Thank you very much.
Most interesting person you've met along your way?
Humanique.
Oh, she's a politician.
I think we're very lucky. We meet a lot of interesting people along the way, and I just don't take the state of Tasmania's issues. I take national issues on as well. I'm quite lucky in this way that, you know, I have to travel around Australia to see these veterans at times, and I hear not just about their issues, but about what's going on in their communities. I was on that cashless debit card to start with, so I've done a lot of the Indigenous communities out there. I think Sojourner I've done 6 trips to over 7 years, just seeing how that all relays out. Because one thing that really annoys me about politicians is they throw your money out there and they don't walk through with it. And that's why they're not getting the results that they should be, because if something starts to go off the railway track, you need to be pulling it straight back on again. And they don't. They say, here you go, that's it, bill's done, and then they move on with the next one. It's like, hang on, who's walking alongside that to make sure that that's going okay? And why have you taken your eye off it? And they do it all the time. And I say to them, that's lack of resilience. You've got to follow your thoughts through to the end and make sure they are successful, and that's where they lose ground.
I really think that's one of the major failings that you see at a federal government level. We have these pieces of legislation come through. Often they come through and they're undeveloped or they're uncooked. We have to decide to vote or not vote on them. They're not ready, and the follow-up is not there.
No.
And then 6 years, 8 years later, you see a report from the audit office saying that this money was poorly spent, or the grants program wasn't administered as well as it should have been. The checks and balances weren't in place. People always ask us about waste and all that sort of thing. It's the biggest source of waste is poor. I think poorly judged legislation that's not held to the same sort of a level of accounting that you would see in a public hospital or any other public.
You wouldn't run your business like that, or you'd be bankrupt before you ate your Weet-Bix in the morning. I'll be honest with you. Okay?
She always says it a little bit more pithily. All right, so I think we've got time. It's probably time to go to questions, which is going to be really fun. Everything can be asked. Everyone gets one question because there's lots of people here, and I think there's lots of questions to be asked. We have Tamar on the right, on my right, your left, and Julia on your right, my left, with some questions.
And in the balcony, we've got a mic too.
Oh, lovely, thank you. And up there, so you might need to tell me when there's a question from up there. So it has to be a question. You have to ask it within 30 seconds. It cannot be a statement, cannot be multi-part. It has, and I just ask everyone just to be respectful and kind, because this is not a time for scoring points off each other or calling people names. This is an opportunity for a respectful, interesting discussion for the next 45 minutes or so. But Jacqui and I have a hard out at 4 o'clock because we have a date with the plane for Canberra. So let's do it. Tamar? Yep.
Michael Steindl. If we accept what the world's climate scientists are saying about global warming, it's not just global warming. We're in a climate crisis for civilization itself, for our environment and for climate. My question is, do you, each of you, respectively, accept that and that the urgency that they're saying that unless we treat this like the pandemic and act within a couple of years, we will not have human civilization as we know it by the end of this century? And if you do accept it, what can you do and what can we do?
Thanks, Michael. Did you?
Yeah, so for me, Michael, I accept that, that's something's definitely going on out there. We can see all that. We're going to have climate refugees in certain places, especially our Pacific Islanders, things like that. For me, I'm already saying, look, where we can, and I guess that's where the military things come in. I've been banging the drum up there to say, why aren't we taking our Pacific Islanders in? They have our values. We see them as our backpackers. They come here and do all the heavy lifting already. We should be doing something about that. But what I just want to be really careful in, when we're reducing our emissions, we need to reduce them, but we have to be careful it doesn't come as a personal cost to others out there. As we can see, people are already doing it tough out there. It seems the rich and the poor is widening. Those people in the middle are going down to the poor. And that is the society that I don't want to see. So we need to reduce those emissions, but we need to make sure that we don't do it at any more cost to the household than what is presently doing. So that is my biggest problem. But I've been running around as that chair as the disaster resilience for 16 months and visiting those communities all around Australia and watching what's going on. And there are some really devastating stories out there. The other thing is when they say that they want to rebuild, how about you rebuild properly so next time the flood doesn't come through in 2 years' time, the bridge goes back down. So when you say you're going to do better builds, how about you actually bloody do it? All right, it's things like that. It's things like getting the Indigenous community, because they seem to be hit the worst in many of these areas out there, is making sure that we get them out of those floodplains and we give them another option and we get them out there and we make it very clear to them, hey, you're going to have to move, whether you like that or not. for the sake of their lives. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, so we don't have to go and clean up. If it's a floodplain now, we need to make sure that we move them out there. And talking about floodplains, why the hell do we keep building on the bloody things when there's other land out there? You know, I watched in New Zealand where one side floods. We visited New Zealand, it was our last thing for the disaster resilience. And they had two sides of the highway. They had this side, which was the lovely golf course that they have that never floods, and then they have this side with all the housing on it. Now, wouldn't you have thought they'd have switched them around? You know, so, but you see a lot of that stuff going around. It's just a lot of it's common sense. And I think that local council has a lot to do with this in saying that they are terribly under-resourced when it comes to helping out when we have these disasters going through towns. You know, we're watching them with old vehicles there. They haven't been maintained because they don't have the money. It seems the government's really happy to give them the equipment, but doesn't pay the person that's got to do it, doesn't pay for the expense to keep that equipment running. So we have some really bad issues here, and you'll be hearing me speak a lot more about that over the next month.
So yes, Michael, I agree that, you know, we're on the verge of, you know, we are not at this point on track to meet the carbon emissions targets that are required to avoid global warming to 1.5 degrees as per the IPCC. And yeah, the first step on the remediation of that has to be that this country has to commit to no new coal or gas projects, and then we have to take every other step possible. And there are many steps, and those have been mapped out. The pathways are clear to decarbonise our economy as quickly and effectively as possible. The challenge is convincing the government to have the strength to do what needs to be done along that way. And when we have a government that's putting out a future gas strategy, we do not have that government. It's also to bring the community with us, with a sense of the opportunities that we will have from that net zero, post-net zero economy, rather than the catastrophisation and negativity which is being thrown at people from the right side of politics.
First of all, how absolutely wonderful to see two different politicians working together and speaking to each other. That's really great. So my question is, from observation from outside, when we look at the parliament, how do you see an opportunity or a possibility to improve the processes? Especially what I'm asking is things like question time. Could the two sides of the House and Senate as well work together better? What would you put in place to improve that?
Yeah, I think for question time is the problem is up there. You know, if you do something wrong or you don't answer a question properly, there's no disciplinary action. Nothing happens to you. I mean, if you're a minister and you bugger up, they go and put you on the sidelines on the backbench for 12 months until they think everyone's forgot about it, and then bring you back up again. Okay, and then re-select you to run again. That's what they do, and I think that's really poor performance. And I think that, you know, if you're making a mistake, you should pay for that. Well, that's usually what happens in everybody else's life outside of Parliament. And I think that's one of the biggest issues you have. And if they just answer the questions, because people can see them, can see what's going on, but because there's more people can see what's going on, they still haven't realised that those major parties are really starting to go down the gurgler, and they're going to end up with either more tills, more independents, more micros. But they can't see that, which is fine by me. I'm happy if they don't see that. You go ahead. You live in your land of delusion. That's happy. I'm coming up the rear, you know. But you know, but that's what it's like, you know. So for me, when you're part of the army and you do something wrong, you're going to pay for that, whether you like it or not. You'll either be docked and pay, or you'll be out there on that drill square, or you'll be doing duties for 7 nights straight. But there is no punishment for those people up there. The punishment is the voter, and the voter is starting to really wake up. And that's what they've got going against them. And once again, those two major political parties have not woken up to that.
So it costs over $1 million a day to run Parliament, and we waste so much time in that place. And those people who watch Question Time know how much time we waste just in Question Time. But there's lots and lots of different ways that we could improve the efficiency of what happens in the House. Certainly just with question time, the rules of question time are set out in the standing orders, and the standing orders can be changed. And if we have a minority government at the next time around, there will be changes to the standing orders, I have no doubt, because many of us on the crossbench experience significant frustration with much of the time wasting that goes on already. Relatively simple, you know, just if people are thrown out of so there are some people who get thrown out of the house, you know, 2 or 3 times a week during question time. There are times when you know that people are having an active competition to see who can be thrown out first. It's so puerile, it's just ridiculous. I mean, there should be just consequences for it. You know, dock their pay, they won't do it anymore. It's that simple. Yeah, there's lots of things that can be done to make things more efficient and more effective. You just have to have the willpower. I would make the point that, you know, it's different in the Senate. You can't be thrown out in the Senate. But in the House, people get thrown out all the time. And the problem is, people come up to me and say, youth crime, you know, all these people being charged with things and bailed, and they keep going, and you don't change their behaviour. I think, well, I see this in my own life. Yeah.
And they're adults.
Yes. Yes, adults. I think
we could actually block them up in detention. That might do them the world of good. I always thought about making him do the 13 weeks at Kapuka and giving them some military training before they were allowed in. But anyway, they don't want to come at that either.
Well, I think we have a question from the balcony. The cheap seats.
Peter Henriksen from the balcony with a very fine view of everybody. Monique, you mentioned the opportunities that await us when we embrace the energy transition or the transition to 100% renewables. Could you and Jacqui talk us through what those opportunities are and how we might all get a piece of it?
The economic opportunities of decarbonisation, you mean? Is that the question? Sorry.
That's correct. The economic opportunities for both the country and we as individuals that await us when we embrace energy transition.
I'll give you one quick example. I could talk about this all day, but many of us are still in the position of receiving power bills and going pale, or opening the gas bill and thinking, oh, you know, those of us who are still paying electricity bills and gas bills, which is almost all of us, are still dealing with extreme costs of energy at the moment. And there's lots of things that the Australian government can do to help people minimise their energy costs. The most obvious one right now is 3.5 of the 11 million homes in Australia have solar, but that leaves a large number that don't. Many small businesses don't. Many schools and public buildings don't have solar on their roofs. If they have solar and they have access to a storage facility nearby, whether that's a home battery or a community battery or EV storage that can then be fed into the grid and come out of the grid in a way with a distributed energy network where we're all taking advantage just of solar within our own communities, and we then take the step of biting the bullet and getting off gas in our homes, we will all benefit because we will have much cheaper electricity. We will have healthier homes because we won't be having gas leaking into our kitchens all the time. We won't be, well, if we have electric vehicles, which are just massive batteries with a car thrown in, we won't have all of the health issues related to vehicular pollution. We'll have a quieter, cleaner environment that we live in, and we will all be, in ourselves, energy producers. So home electrification is something that we can move to really quickly. And then while the government's struggling with building the 10,000 kilometres of poles and wires that it needs for rewiring Australia, we can say, well, actually, we've got it sorted in our network. And we are generating electricity, putting it into the grid, taking it out when we need it, storing it locally as we can, and paying much less for power and having better health. That's just one example. There are many, but to do that, we have to bite the bullet and change the regulatory structures and change the infrastructure in the way that's necessary. It sounds like a really big deal, but it's all doable. You just have to set out how to do it in the next, ideally, 5 years, and we would all benefit from that. It's doable.
So this is how much the Government of the day really gives a stuff about those poor people out there, is that they're fighting with me and David Pocock and all these thousands of new builds that they're putting out there, these new houses, whenever that starts, is to put solar on them and battery, because it's probably going to be 2 or 3 years before you see one of them built, to be honest with you, the way they are going. Now, that would have been a perfect solution to reduce those people who most need it, their electricity bills, for one. And secondly, putting solar up there and boosting that industry up and around Australia. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I just want to make this point. Here's Tasmania, okay? We're 100% renewable, except for about a month ago, you know, when we had the gas going through because our dams were low, or 4 years ago when we had to use diesel generators down there for 10 weeks because, once again, we didn't have enough water, because we still haven't got to the point, after 6 years, of being able to retriculate that water because the state government is not moving fast enough. I've got 360 wind turbines that I have been fighting for, that the community accepts, the community has brought into these. I'm still waiting for a tick off because the state government's too worried about the Minerals Council down there and that there might be some minerals sitting underneath that turbine. Will somebody please tell them I can move that turbine another 5 kilometres outside of that if I need be? But that is what we're up against, and ask us for how our electricity prices are going down there, and we're on hydro. Sometimes they're more than what yours are on the mainland. So I really have a problem. So that's our state government. How do we do that? I don't know, but the first thing that we possibly could do, out of all those thousands of new houses that we tend to build in the future, then make them self-sufficient energy-wise. Pay the extra money and give those people who are the poorest people in this nation a chance to put food on their table, instead of paying a $900 electricity bill that is $200 or $300, because I can tell you that's the greatest gift you could give those people right now.
Julia, do you have one?
Oh. Hi.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Actually, I don't want to put a downer on it, but how are you both feeling about how politics is playing out overseas? Let's just go with the obvious, in, say, the US and UK at the moment, and what that might mean for politics in Australia over the next couple of years. Broad question, take it wherever you like.
Yeah, I think for me that most people in Australia, unless you've got plenty of money, are more worried about how they're going to pay their bills over the next few months, rather than worrying about too much with what's going overseas. I was worried about having a Trump win, but that seems to have been eliminated, thank goodness, in the last few days. Yeah, I'm just thinking, oh my goodness me, that's a problem. So I think hopefully that'll finish him off once and for all. The best thing America could actually bloody do, if the rest of them wake up over there. Yeah, if he thought Biden was old, he may want to have a look at his own behaviour since he's been up there and some of the things he's said, and especially since he's had that pressure put on him over the last few weeks since the Vice President moved up, Kamala. How she walked up, because quite frankly, his behaviour, if age is not getting the better of him and his own insecurities, then blow me over. But I think America, I think it's just given him a whole new thing, and I think he's finished. We can only just hope for, because quite frankly, the AUKUS deal's already a mess, and having him involved scares the bejesus out of me. Then again, he might actually sink those submarines once and for all, so, you know, maybe that might be a good thing.
My take on it is that you can never, you know, I don't know about you guys, but 6 weeks ago I thought things were done and dusted, and things have just shifted extraordinarily. I think we're very lucky to live in a democracy where things can, even in the last few years, things have shifted very dramatically in Australian politics. It's obviously happened in American politics very recently, and in the UK. And one thing I have learned in the last few years looking at international politics is that democracy is not something that we can take for granted, and it's something that we have to continue to fight for, and it's great to see that some democracies are exhibiting that in the last few years, weeks, months. Oh, balcony?
Hello, I'm Claire Hanson, and full disclosure, I'm from the Save Public Housing Collective, and I've lost the question. Can I go back? Oh, lost the mobile.
That's all right, I do that all the time.
I really need you here. Should we come down here and then we'll go maybe someone else?
Yep.
Good afternoon, Jacqui. My name's Sue Smith and I work in the defence industry. Given the utter pasting that Defence has been given over the Royal Commission into veterans' suicide, who in the department considers it appropriate that the shift in such an important contract as the Veterans Transition Program has been contracted from an internationally renowned company to a boutique tiny Queensland company with no experience with veterans whatsoever?
You're killing me here because you're killing my speech for this week when I'm going to blow it up there. It's funny because I actually went and seen those people a few weeks ago, not about that, about something else. I actually went to their school because they deal with, they are doing a wonderful job. They do year 11 and 12 for those kids that are most at risk and that have left school and are living out, a lot of them living out in the streets or couch surfing, and that's great, that's their bread and butter. First of all, they made it very clear to me that they were struggling with the funding to get more of those kids on there, which is really unfortunate. We have something very similar in Tasmania to what they're running up there, up in Queensland, except we do it for grade 9 and 10. And that is being very, very successful, and about 80% of our kids in Tasmania are ending back into mainstream after a year of being what we call them an indie school, but they're not an independent school, which is a bit silly of them to call them that. But they basically pick up those kids that are either on the spectrum or they've, most at risk. They've lost their way. They have a psychologist there on all the time. They make sure that they've got a bed to sleep in. They make sure that they've got breakfast. They make sure that simple thing. They seem to be very, very good at doing that. So I'm not really sure. And getting those kids then into workplaces, into workplaces. However, it's very different dealing with kids to what it is dealing with veterans. So you'll hear me saying a lot about this in the next few weeks, but it is the same, excuse my French, it's the same shit from Defence. And what I'm hearing is, and they had better be honest with me, is that they took this contract because it was the cheapest contract for their people. This is what they're doing. The worst thing in the military right now is when they leave and go into civilian life. It is the transition, and all Defence is doing is making it worse. And if you think the cheapest option, giving them the cheapest option is going to work, they've learnt nothing from 3 years at that Royal Commission. I'll have more.
Oh, should we go to the balcony? Back to the balcony?
Audition. I'm back for a second round. My name is Claire, and I'm from the Safe Public Housing Collective. Now, as we know, we are in the worst housing crisis since the Great Depression, and figures from the Australian Bureau of Statistics show that we need to quadruple public housing supply in the next 25 years to address simply the wait list. And currently we're only addressing emergencies, and everyone else waits until they're in an emergency situation before they get housed. How do you convince the government to prioritise preventing the homelessness and crisis and not just housing people once they're in crisis?
I think for me is that there is ways to do this, and they could have done this. I mean, we had those COVID centres there. There was people that built, some of those states that built COVID centres, they could have put at the end of that, instead of doing whatever they've done with them, they could have put single men in there, put some services in there, made sure they had a bed, because the first thing you've got to do if you are going to get yourself out of that situation is make sure you have a roof over your head, you have a bed to sleep in, and you have breakfast. That's a good start, and you have some services to help you out. A lot of those people that fall under that radar there, all they need is a bit of a helping hand because they've just got a little bit lost in the system, or the system isn't picking them up, and we're not good at that. So I think that a lot more services out there to make a difference. It's bizarre that we can, when we have backpackers here, we can find a house for them, and we can find somewhere in the middle of that where they all cook together, they bring out services for those people, but we can't do it for our own here. So most of those people are not asking, they're not asking to live in a mansion, they're just asking for, those things that they should be given in this country, and there's a roof over their head, somewhere warm to sleep, and food on the table, and I don't think that's a big ask. So there is a lot that can be done, but you know, I mean, you're looking at Tasmania where for even though since I've done that housing deal, every house they build, there's probably another 50 on that waiting list. That's a problem, but Tasmania's focus is putting a roof on a stadium, not a roof on the people of Tasmania.
Yeah, but so my response is similar to Jacqui's, I guess. This is a problem which is decades in the making, and successive governments of both stripes have contributed to it, with just lack of planning and execution. I go back to, in medicine, when you've got a problem and you don't know what to do with it and it's a wicked problem, you go back to first principles. First principle in housing is that housing is a human right, and that everyone has a right to safe and secure housing. And it's a crime that in this country we can't provide safe and secure housing for all Australians. We can do it. There's lots of things we can do. There's no one simple golden answer. There's lots of little strings that can be pulled, levers that can be moved. You know, we can look at the fact that in most suburbs in this country, 10 to 12% of homes are empty. We can look at tax rules. We can look at rules around things like short-term rentals. Yes, we have to put money into building sustainable, sensible housing, that it doesn't have to be super schmick for people who are doing it a bit tough. But if we look at the models from overseas, it can be done. But yeah, the government has showed this government has showed some commitment to it in the last couple of years, but it's been a bit slow to get going with that. It has struggled getting things past both houses of Parliament at times. I thought the Housing Australia Future Fund should have probably been 10 times the size of what it was. It's just as you say, we're sort of playing catch up rather than getting ahead of it. I think we can do it, but people have to accept that this is a national priority for the country, because it is a crisis.
Thank you. Trevor Todd, thanks for today. Could you please pressure ABC Television to put on endless repeat the television dramas Chernobyl, Fukushima and 3 Mile Island?
It's all right, they can't build a submarine, they're not building a power plant.
Can.
Hello, my name's Barbara, and thank you for the talk this afternoon. I'm just wondering if you could talk to us about political donations and funding for elections.
Do you want to go?
You just want to sit us and we'll just keep going. Look, you know, I think it's a really hot topic. It's an important topic. We spend too much money on our elections in this country. It's sort of got a little bit out of control in recent years. I think people know that. But the major problem I have with it is the lack of transparency around the process in this country. Huge amounts of money is spent by the political parties. Certainly with my campaign in 2022 and that of the other community independents, there was a huge amount of talk about the money that was spent in our campaigns, which was significant, there's no doubt about it. Jacqui's already spoken to the fact, though, you can't win a political campaign in this country without spending some money. And the thing that was lost in the narrative was that, you know, in most cases, I can only speak for Kooyong, but in my case, my opponent spent at least twice as much, I think 3 times as much as I spent, but that is not public knowledge, because if you're a member of a political party, your individual expenditure is not accounted for. There's no transparency around it. And the major parties have these massive organisations behind them that, like the Cormack Foundation for the Liberal Party, has a huge, huge corpus of funds that it spends at and between elections, which is not accounted for. And so we need changes around electoral spending and around donations and things like that. Absolutely no doubt about it. And we want transparency. Everyone wants to know about it. And all in favour of real-time reporting of donations. And, you know, if we could have a system where we could ensure a level playing field, I think all of us would agree that if we could limit spending on elections, that would be a really, really good thing. My concern, and I think that of many people who are independents or from small parties is that, I hate to say this, but there's a certain lack of trust of the major parties. You know, what we have is a situation in Canberra at the moment where we know that the Labor Party is negotiating with the Liberal Party about a piece of legislation that we haven't seen, which could affect us very significantly, but also particularly affect people who are coming new to to politics. And we don't want them to be disadvantaged. We don't want to pull up the moat behind us and say, well, we're okay, we're here now, you know, but those new people, are, you know, they're going to be subjected to laws which will completely disadvantage them. We've seen in Victoria and in New South Wales that the state governments brought in laws which were supposed to make things more fair and more even, and the independents lost their seats. And I don't want that to happen. I think independents are good for Parliament. So it's a kind of the devil's in the detail on legislation like this. Peter Malinauskas in South Australia has come up with a model which at first looked really good about limiting electoral spending, but then when you looked at it again, in fact, it was just really aimed and slanted very significantly against small parties and independents. So it's a tough one, and I think it's going to be a difficult discussion in some ways in the weeks and months to come.
I think when you know the major parties are doing a deal on political donations, it stinks to high heaven. You know, if that doesn't tell you everything, when they agree on something just for once, why wouldn't they? Over political donations, you know that there's something terribly wrong. But these donations, I can understand the micros independents might be a little bit hard and they could probably give them a little bit of slack, but any donations that are given, they should be recorded within 7 days, because the bottom line is you have people out there and you can see them up there getting deals done, and if you could actually go back and see that, you'd see that that party probably got $40,000 a week beforehand. That's the problem, and you know what, you can hear it, you can hear all the noise going on up there, and that's been going on for years. It is an absolute disgrace. Quite frankly, I'd like to see it publicly funded, but that is quite expensive, and right now we're in an economic crisis, so I certainly won't be calling for that. But I just think, you know, making a maximum thing of $5,000 from each donor or whatever else. But the thing is, she's right, they have the McCormick Foundation, the Labor Party has different parts of the unions and seconds off them that throw in money. You know, you can go and have fish and chips and, you know, get them a cold served up at lunchtime and pay 20 grand for that. Now, you know, if you're not paying 20 grand for cold fish and chips and don't want something, I have to ask what you're doing there, honestly. Honestly, goodness sake, I mean, if I see one more alternate drop at a dinner where I can know that they're paying $10,000 a seat, I'll just about spew in a bucket. So none of that is recorded. Okay, that is the way they get around things. They'll have these lovely big dinners and you can all pay for $20,000 a seat. There's 10 at your table, there's $200,000. That's what they're doing. I wouldn't dare. I mean, if I went down there and did that to Tasmania and said, hey, you're going to pay $10,000 to see me for lunch, said, I don't think I'd be sitting here today, I can assure you. So, you know, I just think it is really wrong. Honestly, if you want something, then you go out there and you earn it, but you do not buy it, you earn it. And you can see, and this is why I don't have any problem with the Tools as a group. Simon Holmes Court was very honest. He put those donations up straight away. They were all written, they were all done. You can see where they come from, that sort of thing. And that is the way forward. That is transparency. He has nothing to hide. I certainly haven't had one Tool member that had a donation off that come up to me and say, I've had a bit of a problem, someone made a donation and they want something. Okay? That's the difference. So I think that I see what those donations do, and when you see why legislation is not going through and you go, yep, I can see that, worried about your donation, and it gets worse as you get closer to an election. Because if you had 2 decent leaders up there, you would see what you used to see many, many years ago, is that you wouldn't have Tools and Independents up there, because they would work that out and do the right thing that's right for the nation, not what's right by their bloody donors.
I think we're up in the balcony again.
I just wanted to ask, when will or how can extraordinary ladies like you take on another extraordinary lady, which is Michelle Bullock, the Governor of the RBA?
What do we say?
How can we take on the Governor of the RBA, Michelle Bullock? I like yesterday that she's a hockey player, so I have a new respect for her because I too am a hockey player.
I think sometimes it takes. I'll give her one for her courage. At least she believes in what she's doing is the right thing, which is more than what I can say for the political spectrum in Canberra. I'll give her that. I think that, she's been in the game for a long time, and I guess we just have to hope that what she's calling and what she's doing is the right thing. I think she has the most economic credibility between her and everybody else that's in Parliament. I mean, she's had years in doing that sort of stuff. That's been her job, and I just think that we have to try and trust that what she's doing is the right thing. But right now, it's economically straining right across the world. And I know that she's trying to do the best job she can. There is no doubt about that. But it is tough everywhere. And to be honest with you, I just do not see it getting much better over the next few years.
I would add that I think the independence of the RBA is something to be celebrated.
Mm. Yeah, I would say so too, because the last thing you want is politics involved in it. That's why we have a separation of powers, and that's why it should be, so they can make their own decisions. Instead of leaving it up to politicians. I'm sure you've seen that's why you're all sitting here. They don't always make the best choices, let alone the life experience they have behind them. So I think that having that independence is extremely valuable, and we're just going to have to try and trust she's trying to do the right thing that she possibly can. Like I said, I'm sure she's trying. All right, but I'd rather have my faith in her than somebody else that's serving up there in Canberra that's run a corner shop or something like that.
Many people also, of course, have been really concerned about the independence or lack thereof of the public service in recent years and the extent to which it's been under the thumb of previous governments. And with robo-debt, we saw what happens when public servants are, basically acting at the behest of politicians and elected representatives. So, I think sometimes you have to trust in the independent power.
Yeah, you'll see that. Well, that's Veterans Affairs and Defence is sitting at a Royal Commission. Same thing, but the whole thing is those people that were in those departments beforehand while this has been going on are still in those jobs. And it absolutely brings tears to my eyes. And they're getting paid a hell of a lot of money to be in those jobs. And you think, well, you've got a culture, a really bad culture in those departments, yet you haven't got rid of your top line. How do you expect to change the culture when you've still got the same people at the top? I mean, seriously. So, it's looking at all of that. It's really like, well, if you make your way at the top of the public service, that's okay, we'll just leave you there. And once again, not one person that was responsible for those deaths under robo-debt, just like one person that's worked in Department of Veterans Affairs or in Defence that has been a part of veterans taking their own lives, right, will ever be held accountable or put behind bars. I'll tell you what, when you start putting behind bars and see the standard that you'll get after you start doing that, because I bet you things will change really quickly.
I think we might be the last question, but we'll see how we go.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. My name's Stan. What advice do you both have for grassroots individuals aspiring to run for office, whether it be local, state or national, wanting to challenge a major party's members' seat by forming and mobilising a base from scratch?
Do it.
I think the problem is it's really difficult because under Section 44, obviously if you've got a job with the Commonwealth, you've got to chuck that job in. Oh, sorry, not on Section 44, but part of the Constitution is you must, if you're working for the Commonwealth, if you're contracting to the Commonwealth or anything like that, you actually can't run for office, and that knocks a lot of people out. A lot of people. So whether that's any of our federal police, our military, I mean, how many of those people can actually, teachers.
Doctors in public hospitals.
That's it, all of you. You've actually, I mean, who can afford to do that, have children and actually give that up and know that they've got to be out there on that street corner every day for a minimum, I reckon, of 2 years. Basically, after an election's run, within 12 months, if you're not out there, you've got no chance whatsoever. And then you've got to find other people who are also in those jobs to help you to take time, and it is really, really difficult. It is really difficult when both parents are trying to work, spend time with their children. Where do they have time for you without having a lot of money? That's where we're at. Or unless you've come, like you might have been on TV for a long time or a radio announcer where you're where your name and your image is already out there. But to start from scratch, especially since they changed those preference deals in 2016, as much as I admired Malcolm Turnbull, and I admire him for his honesty, because I said to him, why are you changing these so we can't have political whisperers? And, you know, that's how Ricky Muir got up. And even though Ricky Muir was like me when he started towards the end there, he really started to find his way from a normal person that walked in here, and I admire him for that. Those options are not there anymore. And the reason Malcolm Turnbull sat there in front of me and Glenn Lazarus, and we said, why are you doing this? And he said, to be honest with you, because I owe you to that, is to get rid of you lot. And that's exactly what happened. Well, it should have happened, but his worst nightmare, you see, that's when the One Nation was allowed back in. So that's what happens. That's called karma, all right? God works in mysterious ways. So I just say, you know what, if you want to go, just get out there, but you have to be involved heavily in the community. You have to be with your Chamber of Commerce. You have to be, whether it's with, you have to be out there doing a lot of volunteering and making sure you've got a shirt on all the time. You can do that. But it is a massive job when you don't have that money behind you starting from scratch. Good on you, mate. If you can do that, Jesus, you'll write a whole new book. But it is really difficult. You know, you have to give up. And I wouldn't advise that you go and give up your house or the rest of what you had left a little bit, like I did, because it put my poor mother and father. They didn't breathe for about 2 years, I don't think. So. But that's what it takes, unfortunately. It works a little bit differently over here. You have the grassroots thing here. Tasmanians don't even like going to branch meetings. It's good for me down there because I'm highly recognised. I don't have to call a town hall meeting. I just stand in the middle of the street for an hour and don't move. And wait for the, g'day girlie, good to see you again. Do you know what happened to me sheep yesterday? No, mate, what happened? You know, it's that sort of thing. So, so for me, it's quite easy. It's a lot easier for me now because I reckon I can just pull up and show. I don't tell them I'm coming. And then I'll start walking around the businesses, and then that's how it works. I get more and see a lot more people doing that than what I would doing a town hall because they just don't show up at them. But they're happy to have a chat to me or, you know, tell me what's going on out in the streets. And that's how I find out a lot of things. They may not be 100%, but you can go, oh yeah, all right, I've got a sniff of that. Righto, I'll get onto that and have a good look at it for you. You find out a lot by being out in the streets and talking to the locals. You'll find out more there than anywhere else.
Which is true, and we're going to go do that right now. Guys, can I thank Jacqui for her honesty, her generosity. It's been a fascinating afternoon. Thank you.
And I want to thank you all for taking out your Sunday afternoon. So Monique's put like thousands of dollars of cheese and wine out there, so take your time. You did that, didn't you? Or was I supposed to pick that up?
No.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for inviting me into Kooyong. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's lovely. Can we take a photo with the team?
We'll just take one quick photo if that's okay.
It didn't happen if we didn't get a photo.
Are we getting photo bombed? Look at that.
On three, do something interesting.
Oh, yeah. Another one.
3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Thanks, Max.
Thank you. Thank you.